All right, CloudFund Foundation Technical Oversight Committee for the 8th of November 2022. The agenda for this week, actions from last week, there aren't any. We'll hear from the Foundational Infrastructure Working Group, and then we will variously, depending on time, try to talk about shared concourse repo ownership, GitHub Actions quotas across the CF org on GitHub, and there are 5 PRs wanting attention, and then any other business. Is there anything that people think should be on the agenda that isn't? No? Cool. Let's just launch straight in then with the Foundational Infrastructure Working Group. Ruben and Beyhan, floor is yours.
I have terrible internet. Maybe Beyhan can start. I'm trying to find a better spot.
Okay. Yeah. I can start. So we had update what's going on in the Foundational Infrastructure Group at the Cloud Foundry day at KubeCon. So Maya had a presentation there, and yeah, she presented what we achieved in the last year. So we are making good progress with the Jammy stem cell. So I think it has been included in the CF deployments last week. So we switched in Bosh Linux stem cell builder to Jammy now. So it's the so Jammy is so to say officially now released, Ruben, or how to?
Yeah, Jammy is officially released. I think on the VMware side, we're also shipping it now to customers, so we have got a release with it. So yeah, Jammy is official, and so we are getting some reports on the Bosh side that apparently the Ruby performs way differently when it's compiled on Jammy compared to when it's compiled on Xenial. That has been an interesting thing. We have found that if we compile it with a different compiler on Jammy, we get a similar usage or performance pattern. So that is something that we're currently looking into, adding a different compiler, the CLang compiler, in addition to the GCC compiler, to the stem cell, to try to gain our recover the performance characteristics that we had on Xenial. I mean, and I'm talking about Xenial because that's on the VMware side, what we're still shipping to customers. We are not shipping Bionic. So yeah, that's currently a bit top of mind for that working group. We're seeing also an increase in the number of approvers. That's mainly because we're preparing for the PR-only workflows. So a lot of the VMware internal employees are now going through the process to become official approvers. Yeah, I'm having a feeling that it starts to like become more natural. People are starting to get a hang of like the process, assigning the approvers, getting the reviews in, and merging themselves. So like in the beginning, that was really like tied to the working group meetings that we had, right? That was where we basically merged things. But now we see that during the week, there's usually a few things that like go through the whole review cycle and get approved and merged. So yeah, it's picking up speed. We're seeing more PRs because of the preparation for the PR-only workflow. But yeah, I think that, and also there's now a bit more interaction with the other areas. Still not that much. Still, for example, with the UAA and CredUp folks, we're still trying to figure everything out, but there's at least are some signs of things going into the good direction there.
We had also the Nuts 2.0 bump. I don't know whether we mentioned this last time.
Yep.
And we do not use any fork now. So we've been using a fork of Nuts, and now we are with the official upstream Nuts are there, and it required a little bit change how we make the authentication with Nuts. Yeah, this was something we worked on in the last weeks.
Perfect. Thanks. Any questions? Nope. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, folks. Right, let's move on to shared concourse repo ownership. I think that seems like a vaguely fair summary of that issue. I'm just bringing it up for myself while I remind myself what it's about.
The GitHub repositories for CI automation, which are shared between subgroups or working groups, and basically it was about how to organize those repositories so that people have access to them.
Yeah, just reading through these. Yeah, I think reading that, I think I agree. The second option to just add that repo to each working group seems the neatest solution to me. Any other thoughts?
That'd be to each area in the working group, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then that doesn't violate any concerns around multiple working groups owning a repository, so that would be fine. Like we have the RFC that
keep working.
What?
Would the automation keep working? I guess, right? You have just two GitHub teams that both get access to the same library. That should be fine.
It should be fine, and if it's not fine, I will see it.
I think we already have a case of this, right? Where the in the foundational infrastructure working group, we have this repository that is used to create concourse instances on Kubernetes. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, and I'm on my phone. But I think we share that with I think it's the deployments working group, right? They are using that same repository.
But not officially. I mean, we are using your coding, and I think in the long run, there are some refactorings planned so that we can use, let's say, your basic coding as is. At the moment, we have a fork and did some configuration here and there, and that's not nice. I mean, the idea here in this application runtime interfaces working group is really to separate the configuration, and the project that will be shared between the areas of the ARI working group is actually this configuration part that is needed then to set up everything. It will refer, if I remember correctly from the meetings we had here internally, then to the real stuff in your repository. But the idea is that we do not need to, let's say, contribute in a direct way. If we need to contribute, we do it with PRs, the normal standard workflow, and there's no need to fork it and to modify it. But instead, we have a separate project that then contains the configuration per working group, and that is then used to deploy the whole stuff. If that is working well, I guess we will do the same setup also in the application runtime deployments working group, because at the moment there are problems with certificate renewal, etc. But yeah, we do it at the moment manually. But as soon as this has stabilized, we would then switch to the latest version with the Kabel tooling and yeah, use the same setup. That's the idea. Let's see how it works out.
So in that case, would you want to also set up that shared model?
In application, in the deployments working group, we just have one area, so there's no real sharing needed for ARI. That's the PR we have there. That's where the question came up with the sharing. And here we have, I don't know, 7, 8 areas, and the sharing makes a lot of sense. So Autoscaler, at least, Carpi is interested, and I guess a few more. As soon as the infrastructure is there, it makes sense to reuse it.
But if we start to have more of these utility, like common things, maybe we should have like a separate working group where you have like different areas with groups of people that are sharing ownership of this one thing.
I think the let's say the repository that is now planned for application runtime interfaces, that belongs to application runtime interfaces because it describes the configuration of this concourse for the working group. This is not shared across working groups. The repository that is currently in your working group, where the setup coding for a concourse on Kubernetes is inside, that's a different story. This one is probably shared, but yeah, foundational infrastructure is also a nice name for. But maybe you want to have one extra area, or I don't know.
Yeah, like an extra area. It would be nice that the other people that are also using it, like, will be able to become approvers, right? That we don't keep the approvers in one area.
Yeah.
Or create a separate area so that we can have that cross.
That could help, yeah. And then it would be possible technically to add approvers also. Yeah, people that are working in other working groups. This could be actually a good use case.
Do we want to formalize any of this at all, or do we want to just keep it to convention? Like, do we want an RFC that goes along with this that documents it, or is that a bit heavyweight? I think I would vote towards going towards convention because I can see that we could, given a different set of circumstances, even mildly different, we might make a different decision.
So far, I don't see that sharing a repository between areas or setting up a new area, both are two options that don't violate, I think, the existing RFCs. Mm-hmm. So let's leave it to the working groups to decide what they want to take.
Yeah,
I found this discussion quite helpful, that this question came up just to think about it. Yeah,
I think we could try this out since it's still in the bounds of the current operating process. And if we find that like one pattern or the other is good, we could have maybe like a recommending RFC at some point, just even to document what we would view as a good consistent pattern. But we probably don't, like, maybe we should just see how this goes before codifying it.
Yeah, I would be happy to let the working groups do their own thing, work it out for themselves in the meantime, if everybody else is. Seems like no objections. Cool. Right. Next up then, GitHub Actions quotas, while I finish writing this up. This is also one in Slack. Silvestre, do you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, fine. If you want to. So yeah, the question was basically, we are using in the Autoscaler area GitHub Actions quite extensively with good results. Yeah, and we had just a day where basically there were no jobs picked up, right, by GitHub.com runners, And yeah, we were basically trying to find out what the hell was happening. In the end, we asked GitHub the support ticket, and they just told us, yes, you have a maximum of 20 concurrent jobs in your organization, and that's probably what happened. I mean, they didn't tell us if that was exactly the issue. It also auto-resolved at some point in time. So yeah, I guess that's a reasonable explanation for the behavior we saw, that some other working group, some other areas, whatever, some other repository was basically just using up the jobs, so that basically our jobs were starved and out of runners. And yeah, I mean, of course, the GitHub support was very helpfully pointing out that if there's an upgrade in the plan, currently we're on the free plan with the Cloud Foundry organization, that this would also bring more runners. And yeah, basically we started discussing inside our area what to do about this, because of course if there are no GitHub actions running, that now heavily impacts our development. Basically, it blocked us for a whole day. We couldn't get any PRs in. I mean, and that's why we thought, is this actually an issue that we are currently basically using all runners across Cloud Foundry, and do you have some insight into this, how much GitHub Actions is actually using the Cloud Foundry organization, and if the usage is actually increasing? That's not something we can see, right? We only see what's happening in our repository. And I mean, I remember then way back when there was this discussion around more fine-grained repository roles, that there was also this discussion if there wouldn't be maybe an upgrade on the cards to a higher plan, because that would also bring, I guess, more fine-grained repository roles. So if the TOC or if the foundation anyhow has the plan to upgrade the plan, that also would maybe provide us with more runners, and thus give us some breathing room. If not, that's fine as well, right? We would just probably plan then to actually look into the self-hosted runners topic. Of course, there was also already some discussion in Slack, and I guess from other working groups, there was this feedback that running runners yourself isn't that easy, or has a long time, basically a continuous investment into that topic, right? Because you need to take care of them and so on. So that's basically just the questions, right? That maybe give us some clarity on who we should decide going forward.
Chris, do you want to maybe weigh in on the cost of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what the cost estimate would be, but I think last time I looked, we had hundreds of folks in the GitHub organization. At various other points, I've chatted with GitHub support about, like, for other reasons, about upgrading, because we ran into some other kind of limits. It does look like it would be very expensive to upgrade to the enterprise plan. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what would be sufficient here, but let me just look at the amount of GitHub users we have. Obviously, we could trim a lot of that. There's probably a lot of users in the GitHub org that we could get rid of, but right now there's 660 people in the GitHub org. And we're talking about, I mean, it says enterprise, the enterprise tier is $230 a user per year, or the team plan is $44 per user per year. So, I mean, we're looking about at a huge cost increase. So if there is a way to work around that, we should do that. Having said that, if this is something that we need to do to continue with development, I'm not at all opposed to it. It's just a matter of, are we going to allocate, tens of thousands of dollars per year? So yeah, it's a conversation we can have. And I could reach out to, I mean, I guess the one thing that should definitely happen probably is I could work with VMware and try and pare down, really get aggressive in paring down the number of people in the GitHub org. And then at the same time, reach out to GitHub and ask about pricing and get an actual number here. And then the governing board would have to approve that. But I suppose
would be good to have an official quote, right? Because I assume these prices are like not the actual prices if you have that big of a number of users.
I'm not sure. And I mean, I don't think there's an open source discount per se on that, but I'd obviously ask. I think I've asked about that in the past and it didn't really get anywhere. But so yeah, I mean, I guess first question: if this is the first time this has happened, I guess we should figure out if there are other teams using GitHub Actions and where we're running into the issues. See if we can just manage that better. But at the same time, why don't I reach out to some folks at VMware and try and do a cleanup of the number of GitHub users just in general? That would be helpful. And reach out to GitHub and be like, what do we have to do here to get, sufficient GitHub Actions and get a quote on that. So I'll do that.
I'm happy to go away and try and work out actually how much we're using. How much we're using GitHub Actions across the whole org and what the trend is there. Are we using it more frequently as we stabilized, or at least that's another data point for us.
Overall trend, and then just seeing what other projects, I assume there's other projects besides App Autoscaler. So just getting a sense of like what the actual use is and what people need it for. Because if this is blocking, I'm completely amenable to upgrading our plan. It's just the sticker price might be somewhat shocking.
I can just talk from the services management group, and on the cloud service broker projects, we are using GitHub Actions more and more each day. Okay. Trying not to move that to test PRs with GitHub Actions as we can. It's not that we are making a huge progress, but that was our idea. And also for Service Fabric, they are not using it, but they have Travis CI. And Travis CI also has some quota issues, and they have to send an email monthly to get more credits. They get them, but they have to do this process of sending every month an email to get more credits. And the suggestion at that time was to move over to GitHub Actions from our side. So if we keep suggesting people to move to GitHub Actions, we are going to fall into this problem more and more over time. They're not anywhere near to do it, but they could be.
Do we have any sense of what hosting our own runners would look like, both in the short term and the long term? Like, what is the monthly cost of doing it, and do we have any sense of how much maintenance is involved in the long run?
I mean, we haven't looked into that really. I mean, we have seen that it is a little bit of effort. There are, of course, projects around that, Kubernetes controllers or operators that purport to automate this for you and so on. But we haven't gone beyond the initial like seeing what's there. And I mean, maybe what we could do is for not sure if for next time or for later TOC discussion, we could look into this topic and see what it would do from a just perspective of having to maintain it and what it would mean from hardware cost perspective as well. We could look into this, and then maybe we can decide on.
What would be interesting to know as well is, can it be done at an org level, or do we need to host them per repo?
No, it's possible to host them definitely per org level. It just needs then a technical user that is able to, it's an org owner and is able to register the runners for the organization. That's definitely possible.
Okay. Because that brings up an interesting question again of like, we have shared, then we're going to have shared things across working groups, right? So the previous discussion we had becomes even more relevant, because if we're, I mean, I really like that idea, because I think it will probably be much cheaper to do it that way, right? But we need to figure out the ownership model, like who is like multiple people in different working groups want to be able to, I don't know, debug things. Like if a worker goes bad in, I don't know, during European time zone hours or working hours, right? Someone from a working group here needs to be able to come in and fix it. And same for US, right? So it's going to be interesting. I like the idea, but there's some organizational stuff we need to figure out then, besides the technical stuff.
Is this maybe a conversation we need to have more next week when we have more information about the cost and how much usage we'd actually need? Because it might become moot if we find out actually the cost won't be as prohibitively high as we might suspect it is today.
It would be great if there was some option about, to not change our plan, but just pay for more GitHub Actions quotas. But I don't know if that's a possibility, right? We're also on this legacy plan, and at various points they've really wanted us to get off this legacy plan because it's just an old plan. So we'll see. I've already pinged GitHub sales, see what they come back with.
Perfect. Any more on this, or are we happy to move on and rattle off some PRs?
If we go with the self-hosted solution at the org level, we do have the CI budget, right? So that part would be easier. We can just put them in a GCP account that's owned by the foundation.
Yep.
Point. Okay. Yeah. Let's move on and look at PRs unless anybody has anything further on this. Nope. Okay. Quickly then, PR 457. I think most of these we can blow through quite quickly, thankfully. So 457 looks like it just wants one more approver. Just checking the, yep, plenty commits there.
Is that a workgroup internal thingy?
Yes, maybe someone from the UA approvals.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Could ping Thorsten Lu.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, and we'll knock it off our list. 449 is next up. Actually, let's come back to 449 because maybe there's a bit more discussion to be had on that. 447 first. Marcela, I think is this the? Oh no, there's two of them. I think for you today. Trying to bring myself up to speed. Hang on.
Haven't catch up with the project yet. Which one it is?
This is pull request 447. Removing approvers not actively involved in service management.
Oh, yeah. And yes, we were waiting for some time to see if there was any objections from their side. They haven't been. I mean, they all move away from their jobs, and they are not actively working on the foundation. They are not reviewing on anything, so they are not following any of the approvers' requirements. So I guess it's fine to just remove them.
Yeah, let's get approvals then. Is it one more we need for consensus?
Minus in is in.
Perfect. Cool. Right. Merged and merged. Perfect. Okay.
They also need to be removed from the org file, as in maybe they are in the, or the contributor. We also have a contributors list, right? Or wouldn't the automation?
If they are in the contributors list, they would remain. I mean, they would just lose now approver rights, but not contributor. So they are demoted from approver to contributor now.
Yeah, I understand. But I mean, like, if we're talking about cleaning up that list because we want to lower the number of the org, because I mean, like, full disclosure, these people just have moved to a different company, right? They're totally not working on anything CF related anymore, right? So
I could talk to them and see if they intend to contribute in the future or not. And I didn't want to remove them because they still have a lot of knowledge and they have been they had contributed for a long time, so they could be if they want to do something in their spare time, they should be allowed to. It's just that they don't hold contests or anything to approve anything anymore.
That makes sense.
But I can double check with them and see how they feel about being removed from the org.
In general, I think it's a good thing to have people in the org, but there's a cost apparently. Not currently, the future.
Okay then. So Ruben's already merged 463. Thank you for that. And 468 is the last one. Adding a new repo to a working group that has sufficient approvals. Just going to go ahead and merge that. Okay, finally then back up to 449. This is the RFC for the PRs workflow. I don't know whether to take 20 days with no activity as a sign that everybody's happy with it, or whether we should start a final comment period here. Probably actually have to, don't we?
I mean, content-wise, I'm fine. I would say we could start this final period of 1 week. I think we had it like this. Then the question is regarding the implementation. I could do a first steps. I don't know how long it will take. The configuration should not be too difficult. There's this problem with these different configuration regarding the number of approvers, so it needs a little bit of logic, but could be done, and the configuration file will become not as easy as it could be. So it's not a straightforward configuration, but I would do a basic configuration in a static file again and then amend it by automation, something like that, similar to the org stuff. So that should work out.
One question that popped in my mind was, how are we going to deal with default branches? Shouldn't we like take the default branch from the org.yaml and use that instead of hard coding main? Because not all, I mean, you could also use it as an opportunity to standardize on main, but that's like a lot of work that we're pushing onto the teams. Right? And there's already a default branch field. So we could just use that.
Technically, I think no problem. It will then turn out into a we will have then per project one configuration entry, and there's no such thing like a standard configuration and you just overwrite it in certain cases. It's probably then more a every project has a, or we make a list of the typical branch. I guess it's 2, 3, 4, 5.
Default branch is already there. So we have the org automation, right? That creates the repositories that manage it. So it's the org.yaml file. We merge in the team definitions. But the repo definitions those are static. They live in that file, and they have a default branch in the YAML file.
Yeah, but if we want to read out the configured default branch from this org YAML configuration, or from Cloud Foundry YAML, then basically it has to be translated into one entry per project and then applied. I don't know if it takes longer in the execution time. We will see.
But I mean, like we were generating per repo branch protection rules in that config file, right?
That's what we would probably do, yeah.
Yeah.
But you.
Well,
Mhm. I would let's do it like this. I need to look a little bit more into the configuration and see it, and then once I have done the first steps, then we can discuss about concrete questions that came up, etc. I mean, ideally, it's just a really everything can be generated from the existing information. That would be perfect. Then it's just there, and no additional manual configuration. If then, let's say, project owners or area work group leads come up with the idea, well, but I want to configure 2 additional branches and here a +1 and here one more reviewer, then it becomes not so nice anymore. Let's see. Let's start with something.
That's not what I want. Also, like, that seems to not be a good idea, but at least we could change the wording of the RFC to not mention the main branch, but instead mention the default branch.
Okay, yeah.
That's the only change I'm proposing.
So it's then the default branch plus the everything that starts with a V and a number, so the version.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I just edit that directly while I'm here? Because all branches matching either the default branch or the expression V yada yada. And then I'm going to squash all these anyway. So there we go. I have removed the only mention of main now. I see a typo in there, but I'll fix that when I'm going to squash all the commits. Any objections to starting a final comment period here? Nope. Okay. One second, I'll do that. And that'll be for the what? 15?
Maybe just to mention it shortly, there's 470. This is a revert of this 80% deletion of team members. I would just remove it. I have already enough approval, so I would then just merge it. It's a simple thing, just coding and security measure.
What PR number was that?
470.
Yeah, 470. That has sufficient already. We're happy to just go ahead and merge that then.
Okay.
Cool.
And for the next week, I guess I will have one PR because there are tons of warnings in the automation, like we are using outdated Ubuntu versions. Things like that. So I would look over it and give it a try. And then we can see some Node.js old versions, etc., etc.
Perfect. Right. Okay, that brings us to the end of the PRs then. Any other business? Ram, do we know when the Paketo talks from KubeCon are going to get published? Because I would like to share them inside GDS.
So there was one talk that happened during Cloud Foundry Day, and publishing that is like imminent. The videos are on the channel. We're just waiting for like a final go ahead from the events team. There were 2 more talks at the KubeCon floor itself. One was about SBOMs, and the other one was about multi-architecture images with build packs and things like that. So not exactly Paketo, but kind of build packs related. So I don't have an ETA on that, unfortunately, but it should be, not too far off. in the future. So maybe within the next week or so, I'll ping you with the links as a.
Perfect. Yeah, no rush on my side. It was just a thing to consider for teams at GDS, building and managing containers who didn't want to build and manage containers anymore.
Sure.
Okay. Any other business?
Just one thing I wanted to give a heads up about. So because of daylight savings, a lot of the events in the community calendar should have switched over to the right time zones and the right time. But there are a few events that default to like an India time zone or like the universal coordinated time zone or what have you. So some of those events might not switch. So if you do see that there are working group meetings or other things that are not in the proper time slot, please let me know. I'll be happy to fix it.
Will do. Okay. Any more? Nope. Okay, let's wrap up for today then, folks. Have a good week. I'll see you same time next week. Catch you later.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.